Back in 2003, myself and David Tosh, who I started Elgg with, we were working in e-learning, actually up in Edinburgh, and it was a very different scene to what it is now. I'm not sure if you recall, well, in fact, some of you are probably using the same software. It was a world of VLEs, very expensive VLEs, largely because Moodle hadn't taken hold yet. Some of which were costing institutions £100,000, £150,000 a year. And myself, I was employed to work on one of these delightful pieces of software and customize it, which I found an interesting experience. Really, really deeply painful, because the point with commercial software is they don't want you to customize it. They want to save that money for themselves. You have to go off and pay them to make additions. At the same time that all this was happening, open source, which had been around for a couple of decades really, was really beginning to gain some traction. And this was an interesting idea where, rather than having these closed source systems where you really weren't encouraged to modify them or really do anything to them, you had to go back to the company each time, you were allowed to open the source code, maybe have a bit of a tinker, make those tinkerings available to other people, and communities sort of developed actually around the software. So the main one is that it's centered on people, not technology. The idea is very simply that you pick the tool that fits your need. People are the great sources of information, as in the user base is the great source of information. We know there's a horrible word called folksonomy, which I think was voted recently as one of the worst technology-related words there are. It may even have been number one, and probably it deserves to be. But the whole idea is that rather than having this top-down view of how information and people and so on should be, let the people do it themselves. Just be flexible. Nobody's going to fill in 16 pieces of metadata. Nobody's actually going to do that in the real world. Although all of this stuff, you know, is theoretically interesting, and certainly back in 2003, you did literally have pieces of software when you uploaded something and you had 8 pieces of metadata. Nobody really uses that. And so it makes a great sort of piece of research, but it doesn't make a great tool for people to actually use. Yeah, I only work with Twitter. And it's another way to get people to keep coming back to those applications. And again, if someone's giving away a service for free, and you're signing up and pouring lots of data into it, what are they doing with that data? The open-ended sort of simple things are the things that are going to work. But what happens now? All right, we're at this point where it's beginning to gain traction. Lots of people are beginning to pick it up and see that you can use not just Elgg, but simpler tools in education. These large specs, by and large, are going out the window, and it's not because of us, it's because of sort of Web 2 and open source and the way things are progressing, but it's beginning to be a different landscape, a different learning landscape. So this is EduSpaces, as it stood a couple of days ago. It's actually the screenshot I sent to this lot to paste on the back wall, this sort of rotating slideshow of screenshots going on there. But things have progressed outside of education for us. We've actually begun to look at building networks in other places. Like this one, which is a rugby fan site, which is based on Elgg. It's not often that you get a bunch of people from universities together and you show them a picture of a bum, but that is what I've done. So, and this is a, this is a very commercial site, but it's run on the Elgg software. And the point to this is that if you look outside of education, you can also find issues and technological decisions and feature requests and all kinds of things that you might not find in education, but will help the educational community, and vice versa. The educational needs will help the commercial community. Where you can have a community that's hosted somewhere, moderated somewhere else, with participants from all over the world, just having a conversation, discussing, researching together, with no institutional barriers, which again is something that Stan hinted at earlier. And this is, it seems to me, this is like the logical next step. And we're beginning to make it work. We've got, this is the model effectively where you're in the center again, but here are all your different communities that you're collaborating in, which are all over the world. And at the moment, we're making it work using something called Explode. Actually, what we are talking about doing is hopefully creating a peer-to-peer network of conversations in the community. So you don't have to use the centralized glue in the middle to communicate with other communities. But if you've got an elgg community here and an elgg community here, they can just talk to each other. Basically, the administrators of each one just say, right, I want to talk to that community, and it's done.
That clearly this is a panel session at the end of the day, so there'll be more opportunities to ask any questions.
End of the trivial question. What does elgg stand for?
It doesn't stand for anything.
What does it mean?
Every time. Okay. Elgg is a small village in Switzerland, and it's genuinely named after that village. And that's basically what it's all about.